So I'm Brad Leavitt with the AFT Construction Podcast, and today we're fortunate to have co-owners Jason and Mark with Beyond Build Constructions. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks for having us.
How are you, mate?
Doing very good. And you may notice, from Jason's mate there that they're joining us from Australia. So it's good to have you from such a long distance.
Yeah, cheers. It's good to be here.
And the funny thing, before we started, they're on their morning cup of coffee and we're winding the day down. That's just and they're a day ahead. So you got to keep us posted what happens tomorrow. I could use that insight. So
yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to get into your story a little bit later, especially your partnership. I think that's important for a lot of our listeners. How do you do that, when you're friends, when you're business partners, and make that still work, 50-50. But one thing that intrigues me about you guys is that company culture. And I know you have a video that I want to ask you about as well, about, the team building exercise, that weightlifting and stuff you guys did. But let me ask you this. How do you create a company that has happy, engaged, and satisfied employees?
It's it's something we're quite big on. We expect a lot from our employees, and we seem to think that we give a lot back to them as well. But I guess a few things that we're quite big on is everyone sort of getting along and creating that culture, and everyone really needs. Sorry, Brad. Can I start that again? My text messages for some reason coming through this.
Are you on a Mac or a PC?
I am, but I'm supposed to have.
It's okay. If you go into your Mac settings, you'll see system preferences.
Yes.
Go into system preferences, and then you should have notifications or sound. Let me think. Wait. Oh, no. Actually, it's your text. You go into iMessage. So if you go into iMessage, click on the iMessage down below, and then in the top left, click on messages, click on preferences, and then right here, message receive sound. Like I had mine off.
Gotcha.
Sorry, when it says no, you're fine. So where it says message receive sound, you should be able to turn that off. Like you see where it says application, like notify me about messages from contacts, notify, play sound effects. If you uncheck all those, you should be good.
Notify, just uncheck.
Should all be off now.
Yeah.
My messages. I'll just turn everything off. Okay.
I think we're good.
Sorry, Brad.
You're fine.
Close, mate. Okay.
No, that's easy. So I can, I'll start with that first question because I could cut it in there.
Sure.
Okay. So one thing I noticed, that I want to dive into first is the company culture. That's really big. And, you two seem to have perfected that. I saw that video on your website about, the company outing and just, how you're empowering your team. So let me ask you this. What is something that employers should be doing to create a happy and engaged, atmosphere for their employees?
I think it's quite big on our priority list to make sure that everyone's cohesive and everyone gets along. And we're a building company at the start of the day, but at the end of the day, everyone needs to enjoy coming to work. And we are quite big on culture and investing in external activities and not so much just work all day. As you said, we've had a few team training days, whether that be personal trainer on the beach before work, or we regularly do an employee of the quarter where we try and praise, that employee who's specifically, sort of stood up.
We normally put on a barbecue for that, and we all sort of hang around the factory and have a chat. And our guys quite regularly sort of hang out on the weekends, and they'll go to the gym together. They'll go to breakfast together. They'll go, to the pub together. So they all sort of try to hang out on the weekends as well.
We're quite a young team as well. So everyone has very similar interests, and we try and team up guys who are compatible with each other on site, so they enjoy coming to work. It's a long career for a lot of people that don't enjoy what they do, and it's if you've got to enjoy your career for it to really get through life, and that's pretty big on our priority list for our guys. If we keep them happy and everyone's enjoying coming to work and the culture's quite prevalent, then we feel like things seem to go a lot smoother.
So, yeah, it's true. It's funny because construction is a tough business, as we know. Construction, architecture, design, and the reality is being a business owner is tough. There's a lot of ups and downs, and so the more you create a culture where people are vested, where they enjoy coming to work, and it kind of takes them through those low points of the day when, your subcontractors or your trade base is not performing, clients upset, all those things come into play. So how often would you recommend doing, team building as you guys do? You said once a quarter you're doing, employee of the quarter. Is it something you're doing once a quarter as a team building? Do you recommend doing that more?
Yeah, definitely more. We have every Thursday we sit down with our foremans and sit down in the office and really see what's working on site and what isn't. And, every month or so we schedule a chat with our younger guys, and they come through, and, not just work issues, but anything outside of work. We're happy to sort of guide them in the right path. We take a bit of responsibility as mentors as well as business owners, and really want to make sure everyone's, happy, and we're quite high on sort of mental health and trying to look after our guys in that front. But I don't think you can really put a time on it. It's just when it feels right, to just sit down and just take a step backwards, instead of, we expect a lot of our guys do quite long days and overtime. And if that isn't rewarded, then it can really become a one-way street. So we really feel like you can't really overdo it.
Yeah, you sort of get a feel for it when, you can sort of tell the boys sort of need that chat and that lift and the boost, and everyone sort of comes together and, sort of praises what they've been doing right and has a bit of a chat what they need to work on. But yeah, I think Jason's right. You definitely get a feel for when it needs to happen.
Well, I like that you said that every Thursday you're meeting with your foremans. Now, one thing I've picked up from other companies is they do this once a week call, whether it be a go-to meeting, a Zoom call, or they're meeting in person when they can. And they're asking, like, okay, Mark, on your projects, are you having any issues with your subs? What's next on schedule? How's so-and-so performing?
Yeah, exactly.
And the same thing with you, Jason, on your projects. And so what ends up happening is, as a team, you're collaborating. Well, I'm having this issue on my project, or these people aren't showing up, or maybe you're splitting drywallers on both projects, and you're trying to say, okay, well, who's more urgent? Who needs to take that crew first? So I've seen advantages, as you mentioned, to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so reflective in our industry, even on the other side of the world. I'm sure we all go through the same challenges and goals, but it's something that's quite small on our end, and we've been doing it for a little over 18 months now. And when we're busy, it sort of gets put on the back burner, but that meeting, and we really feel that further down the track. There's seems to be more issues that are arising because we're not slowing down. We're not taking that time to sit down and ask the guys on site what's what's working, what isn't working, who's giving you grief, what can we do better, what can Mark and I do better to make your building on site and your experience better. And it goes a long way. It's just even a brainstorming session for an hour and a half every week. And, sometimes that meeting might end in a beer or two with the guys afterwards. So it's pretty casual, but, once again, we seem to get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, I agree. And everyone's got their own opinion, I guess, in those meetings. So someone might flag something that, another guy might not think is a big issue, or he has a solution for that, is better than ours. And it's just more of a brainstorming thing. Everyone has a bit of input and comes together and sorts it out together, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love that, because what's really important is you think about any successful company. I mean, your goal is to not make the same mistake twice, right? So
Absolutely.
if one of you, Jason or Mark, or myself, Brad, if I'm making a mistake, I want to make sure that as a team, we sit down, not to throw anyone under the bus, but that we're communicating, hey, we just had this issue. We missed this, we had this lack of communication with the customer, whatever it may be. And let's address it as a team. Let's make everyone aware so that everyone's kind of being educated on that same mistake so we don't make it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if it means that, the guys are happy to put their hand up, and we're human, Brad, everyone makes mistakes. But as you said, if we can eliminate that happening on the next project, where they might be up to that stage in a month's time, oh, hey, guys, I did this. I'd probably do this differently next time. And it really eliminates that. You're right. Errors are inevitable, but errors happening twice, they're usually avoidable. So I think it's quite beneficial in that sense.
Yeah. And we've had that like any company, and we can dive into that. And so, as far as the company goes, all of us make mistakes, and we have lapses in communication, but it's something we learn from. So what are, being a young entrepreneurs that both of you are, starting your company, I mean, I'm sure there's been some bumps and bruises along the way. What are some of the mistakes that you've had as a company that have now made you better today because of it?
Look, I'm a bit of a yes man, to be honest. I do a lot of the pre-construction, the preliminary process, pretty much get it to commencement date and hand it over to Mark, and he'll do the project management side.
So I quite often will get a call, like I will speak during the day, and Jason will be going to a meeting or something, and he's like, we don't want to commit in this time frame or something like that, and then Jason will come out of the meeting and he'll give me a call and go, "You're gonna hate me, like I've just committed to another job in this time slot."
I'm terrible at saying no. If there was one thing that that's a big weakness of mine, it's really stepping in and overloading the guys, and it's not fair on them sometimes as well. So I guess between that and smaller projects when we were in that growth period, chewing up a lot of our resources, I think we probably could have targeted our market a little bit more specific, rather than just saying yes to anything that fell in our lap. And there's some projects we're set up for, some we aren't, but we've seen that a lot of the smaller projects chew up a lot of our resources more so than the bigger ones that we were probably going for at that growth stage. So I think learning when to say no and learning when to not overbook, and obviously that's a scheduling issue as well, but really knowing when to sort of put your foot down and say to clients, and I still find it very, very hard. I'm not sure if you're in the same boat, but just rejecting a client when the timing's not right for us. I think that's a big
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you said that. I'm going to build upon that because it's funny. I think we've all been in that situation. I'm sure many listening have nodded their head. Yeah, you want to be a yes person. You want the sell. Mm-hmm. You want to make that commitment. You want to keep the client happy. And sometimes you commit yourself to something you can't perform to, but before we get into maybe your wheelhouse or what your company's good at, it's really easy as a company, or not easy, but I'd say that most of us in this industry understand the ebbs and flows of construction, right? It goes up and down, the market does, and it's really hard to turn down work in our field. And there's a few reasons. I mean, one of the reasons we don't turn down work is because it's feast or famine. When it's good, you got to work really hard in preparation. Yeah. And then number two is you don't want to give the impression in the industry that people are reaching out. Oh, we reached out to Jason and Mark. They're too busy, which ends up, that gets around town and kills the leads. So how as a company have you started to develop to say, we understand when you get this lead generation, we're good at that, we're going to pursue it, or we're not good at that, this is not a good fit? How do you decipher between the two?
Oh, we're definitely still learning to do that. We're probably still something that we're definitely working on. We still struggle to say no.
I personally take a lot of responsibility in qualifying the leads when they come through. So
how do you qualify? How do you qualify them, Jason?
Generally a phone chat. If we're first point of contact, we'll and clients haven't got any plans, we do have a couple of local architects and building designers that we work with. We do like to be engaged early in that process, but if we get a lead through our socials or on Instagram or on our website, I'll generally try and have a phone call with them, 10, 15 minutes. And I'll generally just try and get a feel for the project. The area, timing's a big one, and the scale. And if it all seems to line up and align, I'll usually, a lot of guys would, on their own time, voluntary, come out to site, spend sort of 2 or 3 months going through this process to find out the budget doesn't align with the scope. So I'll try and, we charge a fee-based proposal to come out to site and meet the clients. And if they're willing to happy to pay for our time at that initial meeting, like any engineer or architect that generally does, but the builder seems to not always get that call-out fee, so to speak. If they're generally happy to pay that small fee, then they sort of fall into our qualification list and we'll pursue further. But if clients are reluctant to see the value, then we might not be the right fit. So it seems to really qualify them sooner. So I guess the 3 things that need to hit it is timing, scale of project, and commitment.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this: if I understand you correctly, when someone calls you and says, "Hey, Jason and Mark, I'd love to have you work on my project," there's an initial fee for your time, either commute, time on site to evaluate the project, job site location, that you're given to that client.
Yeah, correct. It's quite small. So the usual process is I'll have that 10-15 minute phone call. Then I'll head out to site, have a scale of the project, do a walkthrough. It'll take maybe half an hour or 45 minutes. Come back and prepare a budget estimate, organize the second meeting, and go through and just make sure everything aligns. And for that, we charge $250. So it's quite small. It's quite a small fee for probably something that takes me 7 or 8 hours. But, you know, if our
but there's
clients
skin
are
in the game. Yeah, there's skin in the game. There's some investment from them.
Exactly. And it's showing some sort of commitment, and, you know, probably shows that they're not paying 5-10 builders to do the same. So it's, you know, it's by all means not about making money. It's about sort of getting that commitment from the clients. And if the project does proceed, that fee does come off the end scope of work. So that's something that we found. You know, I'm sure a lot of builders do go through the same, but there's a lot of clients out there that are happy to use our time without any commitment. So that's something that we've found quite beneficial, and it sort of draws that line in the sand between being professional and you know, just being a general carpenter that's looking to come hang a few doors for them. Sort of draws that line in the sand, we found.
Well, I love that you do that, and here's why. So many people listening either haven't done that, or they want to get to that point where they're charging for a bid, whether they're charging for the consultation appointment or an estimate. And I think it's important that all of us do that in the industry. And the reason being is we need to understand what our clients value, right? There's ways that we can represent that. We can show that through marketing, through social media and other things to our clients. But what's really important is that if there's a potential client that's going to reach out to 6 builders and say, hey, give me a bid.
Yeah.
Really what they're valuing is price. And that's it.
Absolutely.
And most of us don't fit in that scope. It's not that we're expensive. It's just there's different values we offer, whether we're communicative or we're punctual or we do good quality or responsive, you know, and there's value to that. There's a price involved. And so I love that you said that, because one thing we have not done in those consults, you know, I do vet the customer and I try to get a good feel for them, as do you know, what's your budget? What's your time frame? Do you have an architect? Do you have a designer? We love to put the team together, work in pre-construction. Here's our retainer that will work with you through pre-construction, credit at the build, very similar. But what I found is, and what I've learned is that over the years now as a builder, if I get a cold call and they say, hey, Brad, we're reaching out to 4 builders, you're one of them, I give them a fee. If you want me to bid this, you know, $10,000 for a bid.
Yeah.
But here's why. It's not just, you know, we're going to put 40, 50, 60 hours. We're going to dilate scope, you know, go through this and put it out there. And so there's time vested from my team that to take them serious. And I've had clients say, I really respect that. And I had some that say, get out of here. You know, that's not for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're probably not the clients that you really want to work with. But I guess, Brad, you've done such a great job at showing value that you do as a builder, especially the scale of some of your projects. And, you know, as you said, we're not necessarily want to compete on price. We're not the cheapest. We're not the most expensive. We do fall somewhere in the middle, but that's not something that, you know, if a client's looking for the cheapest project, they probably don't see the value in what we do, you know? So yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So as a young, you know, business, you know, I'm a fairly young business. You guys are, you know, what are ways to show that value? Because you do offer something that's really great, you know, for your customers. So, you know, what are some different ways to show that value that you guys bring?
Showcasing it on social media is a big one.
Yeah, I think in this, you know, in this current time and climate that we live in, I think being able to showcase your projects through a platform, whether it be online or through socials, I think that's a huge leg up. And I think it's a big investment that a lot of sort of small businesses should be looking into, whether it's, you know, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn, or it's all, you know, it all goes quite a long way to be able to provide you value before clients even, you know, pick up the call and pick up the phone. I mean, a lot of our leads probably do start at word of mouth, which we like because we've already got that sort of foot in the door. And, you know, we've got some clients that are willing and happy to sort of put our name forward. And I think having the platforms there that enable these potential clients to see what we do not just, hey, this is a referral, call such and such. They did a really good job in our house 2 or 3 years ago. They'll do that. They'll, Google search or Instagram or Facebook, and then they'll see our platform. They'll see our team. They can put a name to the face of the name, and before they even call us, they already know what sort of projects we do, the quality we work to, the culture that we seem to bring within our company. So I think in that sense, that provides a lot of input.
I think 90% of people that we'd get phone calls from would have seen either our Instagram or our website for sure.
Yeah.
They've done their background research and had a look at the work that we've done previously.
I think, yeah.
Well, and I love that you said that. I mean, the reality is, I've been on your website, and what I like about your website, it catches your eye in the beginning. And so we're going to have that tag for our listeners so they can come look at it. But what I really like is right in the beginning, you have this great video, right? It's a minute long, and it has, some very creative elements to it, right? It's showcasing homes under construction, the tool bag on. It kind of shows just the passion of the team, and then it rolls into the finishes, right? And so in essence, you're creating an emotional journey, a story for the user to follow along.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the goal. So it's very refreshing to hear that. And I'll be passing on the praise, definitely.
No, it's very well done. It's funny. I had Danny Wang on the podcast a while ago, and he's just huge on video content. It's like you can't have enough video content. And the one thing I'll say to anyone listening is going back to Instagram, which is very easy to do this, is through stories, is you can build a personality. And what I love is over the years, getting comfortable with that platform, and LinkedIn as well, is that, I can showcase stories of my team, the culture, the product, our process, behind the scenes. And so what ends up happening, word of mouth is great, but what ends up happening is you start building an audience and a support system in the public of people that feel like they know you. They feel like they know your systems, and it creates a comfort level that now makes that sell easier for business development.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're still quite fresh and young, and we decided to start investing in our socials and marketing pretty early on, but also, quite recently tried to ramp it up with our on-site daily stories. We've got that, a title page for each project running, and each foreman, and they'll send in to a WhatsApp group, daily updates, small videos, and just snippets. And, we try and get them to talk on camera, and it's something that we like to sort of, showcase their work as well and put a name to their projects. And we find it very valuable.
Have you found that different platforms work better than the others? What's your number one lead producing social media platform you're using?
Look, we probably invest most in Instagram. I don't think we get many DMs directly, asking if we can. We get a lot from trades and suppliers and whatnot wanting to collaborate, which is great. But in terms of landing leads and clients, I think it's kind of a funnel, which will direct them to our website, which is probably our number one platform where we'll find leads or whatnot, or, a lot of phone calls, and they'll say, hey, we've looked up, we heard your name.
We saw you on Instagram, or
we
heard you somewhere.
I don't think it's a direct sort of lead magnet, so to speak. But we definitely.
But it's a landing page. It's
absolutely it's a landing page.
And that's the thing with Instagram is it's a working resume. It's a landing page for people to, it's a soft sell for you guys. And earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that you love to be involved in the beginning, which is same as me. You want to be involved and carry that process for the customer. So is that by intent that you don't do in-house design, in-house architecture, that you're building that relationship and that network for referral and camaraderie? I mean, what's the strategy behind the architect designer outsource?
So, I mean, probably long term.
Yeah, it's something we want to work.
We definitely want to work towards bringing it in-house. I mean, at the start, I guess it comes down to learning as well. We sort of dipped our toe in and said, we want to start being involved in the design process.
We were finding early days, Brad, that clients were calling us, and we'd worked with a bunch of local architects, and we'd sort of, flick them on their details and hope to hear back from them, in 3-6 months when the approvals come through and we've got some draft and concepts. So it was actually Mark's idea early on in the piece that, hey, let's team up with a local architect who's Jake from Shire Building Design for most of our projects, and he'll he'll be there with us through the preliminary process. We'll meet there on site. He'll sort of take the reins. We'll sit down and he'll get the concepts. We'll catch up with the clients, and we're present maybe 4 or 5 meetings before the approval comes through and the actual scopes and everything starts going. We start going into that tender process, and we're happy to sit down with the engineers. And as I'm sure you find as well, a lot of engineers will just design straight out of the book, whereas we can find more efficient ways to build. I mean, we're all carpenters by trade, so where we can get away with using structural steel usually ends up in a more efficient component for us, for our clients, and we pass on the savings. Whereas a lot of the time, clients are coming to us with their plans, telling us their budget, and the plans are exceeding their budget by 20, 30, 50, 60% sometimes, because they hadn't had that builder engaged early. So we really like to voice our opinions, without treading on the design too much, but it's worked really, really well. So
we also found.
Go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
We also found that, we were hearing from these people, directing them to someone, they'd sort of go deal with an architect. They might meet another builder along the way as well. And then we might not hear back from them. This way we sort of follow them through the journey and work with them.
Hold their hands,
yeah,
so to speak.
Yeah, basically. And we have our input of what we think's good and all that kind of stuff as well. But we just find that we stay engaged with them right up until they start building, basically.
No, that's interesting. I love that you said that, because, going back to the pre-construction part, the one issue we all have is all of our clients have a budget. It doesn't matter what scale they're at, entry level to high-end luxury, they still have a budget that they want to be within.
Absolutely.
And everyone sees all the eye candy out there through design. And it's really important that the builders involved with the architect and design team early to have those budgets, set that. And as you mentioned, okay, for the design aesthetic, we have this big multi-slider. Let's go to a steel I-beam in lieu of a big glulam, because it's going to be more narrow, right? It's not, the depth and the span could be bigger, and we weren't going to have any sagging over time. And so there's input that you can give, so how there's a fine line there. When you have the budget, Jason, when you've met with the client, you've done that 250 consultation, you've given them an overall budget. Okay, now we're in design. How are you monitoring and managing that designer and architect to make sure that you're within 5, 10, 15% of your original budget and not 50% over?
Absolutely. So our architects that we generally work with will design, including a contingency, and say the budget might be 600,000. Most of our market is anywhere between maybe $400,000 projects and $1.5 million, sort of that sort of lower end, but sort of high end renovations, additions, extensions, and dual locks and whatnot in more recent times. So we'll sit down and work with that budget, and the more transparent the client can be with us, the longer, the further it's going to go, the easier the process is, and we're just quite transparent along the way. We'll design to that budget. We'll sit down with concepts. The architect will come through with their design. So there's quite a fine line there between treading on their toes and not letting them be creative, because they're trying to narrow down to this budget. So they'll basically work on floor plans and try and get the rooms and the space that's accessible. And then I guess we can tweak finishes and lightweight construction as opposed to concrete and steel, and really try and achieve that overall feel within the budget. Then along the way, the architect might suggest, hey, I want these really great retractable louver screens, electric screens, look great, to shut off the western sun that comes through. But give the client that conscious decision of, hey, it's going to add 20 grand to your overall budget, rather than a lot of architects will just throw that stuff in. The client will be super invested in the design. They'll love everything. And then I've got to be the bearer of bad news and come in and say, well, you can't afford this. And, well, we love the design. I'm like, well, unfortunately, I think you might have, your architect maybe not have really factored in budget. And then a lot of the times than not, Brad, I'll be dissecting the architect's design. Yeah. And it sucks, being the bearer of bad news and telling these people that they're so invested in the design, sorry, your budget won't emit this. We can't do this. We've got to pull this out, and that's how we're starting this 12, 18 month relationship. Me basically telling them, hey, I'm sorry, we can't do this for what it costs. But if we give them the conscious decision early, they know that's planted in the back of their seat, and they know, hey, if we want this, it's going to cost this, and they can weigh up that call.
I love that you said that. What's really important, to think of it for any builders listening or any designer or architect, what's really important is you said, know your numbers, understand the budget, right? And put that out there. And the reason being is because some of our clients have the money and they may say, that's fine, I'm willing to upgrade. If I want these electric screens to protect me with that west facing sun in Australia or Phoenix in July, right, where it's super hot, we're giving them that option. But the only way we can do that is by knowing our numbers. So what's great that I love that you said too is you talked about finished budgets. And this is where a designer, if they have a builder, they should be asking them, what are my budgets? Where are my budgets?
Absolutely.
Because if we can say, hey, look, designer, I'm going to give you $12 a square foot. I know our measurement system's different here in the US, but $12 a square foot for wood flooring. And, in the backsplash, I'm going to give you, $18 a square foot. The laundry room tile is going to be $22 a square foot, so you can do something fun. Now the designer can stay within that meets the overall budget. And then if the client says, hey, I want this laundry room tile that's $100 a square foot. Okay, that's fine. We budgeted 22. Here's the cost difference. And now they can make that conscious decision, which is the exact words you used.
Exactly. And I'm sure we go through it, obviously different scale of projects, but we have the same issues along the way. But I think if you can really put that back in your client's decision rather than pigeonholing them in, then I think it's a much more fairer, transparent process and really keeps that relationship fruitful through the pre-con stage.
Yeah, what's funny is we talked about mistakes earlier, and one of the mistakes I made earlier in my career is a client would say, or the designer, oh, I love this tile, and I love this wood flooring, and I want this, electric screen or whatever it may be, and we're like, sure, yeah, let's do it. Then you come to price, and they're like, hold on, Brad, you are so far over, you're not close. Whereas now, it's a lot easier to be stern and say, no, this is our budget, this is where you want to be. However, it's your decision, but here's all the information for you.
Yeah. Exactly. And I guess you kind of look at it in a comparable industry, say buying a new car, right? You go in and you look at the base model Toyota and it's, how much that is. But when you want to add four-wheel drive and leather seats and heating and, racks on top, whatever it so be, they know that they're making that conscious thought and this is their sort of base rate and they're making that decision. So on obviously a different scale, but it's the same sort of reference, I guess.
Well, and to that point, I think it's important we answer a few things. It's funny when we were talking about vetting clients, and one thing I struggled with when customers would call me and say, "Hey, Brad, what?" And I'd ask them, "Well, do you have a budget for this? Do you have a budget?" And they would say, "I don't know. What's your cost?" And I'm like, "Okay, well." Typically we're building between X and Y, or here's a sample, here's a house we did that's X dollars a square foot, because otherwise it becomes, a guessing game. And it's funny because the analogy I always use is if I were to go to you, Jason and Mark, and I'd say, how much is it for a bag of groceries? Well, I don't know. What do you have in the grocery bag, right? What do you pick them from the supermarket? So it's very similar with the house. How much does it cost you? How much is your cost to build a house? Well, it's just as the same as saying, how much for a bag of groceries? What are the options? What are the upgrades? What's the square footage? Is it hillside? Is it flat lot? What's the type of construction? So it's really important that we educate ourselves and understand how to communicate that to the customer and give them analogies that they understand. And then say, look, if you struggle with what that budget will give you, let me show you my portfolio. This house is your budget. Here's the level of finishes, level of upgrades. At least they have a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's building custom homes is, I think, with the two we have here is custom and project homes. I believe you guys call them spec homes, but that basically you're picking something off the plan and putting it in. You probably can put that square meter or square footage rate on that project, but a lot of our market is everything is completely custom. It's nothing's the same. Where we work on a lot of sort of 150-year-old Victorian style terraces that are only 4 meters wide or 12 feet wide, and the square meter rate for an extension on something like that is obviously going to be quite larger as opposed to a brand new dual lock home, in the suburbs. So quite a big bag of groceries, so to speak.
So I love that you gave those analogies of the Victorian tight, 4 meter. Did you say 4 meter wide?
Yeah, 4 meter wide. So just
That
going
is narrow. Wow, that's
8
amazing.
feet.
So let me ask you, what are some of the different construction types? Being that you're in Australia, we're here in the United States. How does construction differ in your neck of the world?
So we're based in Sydney, and we seem to have a lot of variables. We're based in Sydney South, which is probably more suburbia.
Yeah.
So a lot of freestanding homes that are 600 to 800 square meter
dual locks.
Square meter blocks, and a lot of dual locks or duplexes. But a lot of our work is in the eastern suburbs around sort of Bondi Beach and whatnot, where it's quite high dense volume of terraces, where it's 20 in a row or so with all adjoining party walls, and they're quite old and a lot of character and a lot of heritage conservation zones. So our market is generally in the inner city, eastern suburbs, which is probably the more higher end of Sydney, I'd say. But in saying that, we're sort of spread out everywhere. Sydney. It's hard to explain. I can't really speak for the whole of Australia, but there's probably 5 main areas that are all very different markets, all within about an hour's drive of each other. So most of our work is, I grew up on a lot of high-end Victorian style terraces, and Mark was
the same thing.
Mark was very similar. Yeah. We're starting to tap into new builds and dual locks and duplex market, which is we're learning a lot as well, but we're finding that they're very, very enjoyable to work on, where we're not working with walls that are 100 mil out of plumb and out of square, and trying to tie in with all old lime render and trying to keep the old original heritage. It seems to be quite a
limited space.
The
large spaces are much easier to work in. Like, you have to really schedule your deliveries and stuff in these small terrace blocks.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a doorway that's a general door. It's 800 mil wide, which I'm not going to be able to convert that into inches. But yeah, less than the 3 feet wide entrance door by 8 foot high 7 foot high door, and trying to get a pack of delivery in concrete.
How do you do that?
Rear.
Yeah. So when you're working with these Victorian and these tight homes where you have tight entries, how are you getting a large island countertop? How are you manufacturing that, and getting that through the windows, with the crane?
Yeah.
I mean, how does that even
Lots of
work?
manpower.
A lot of heavy manual handling, I think. Where mate, you name it, we've done it. We've taken out neighbours' fences over time, and we've craned things over the top, and we've removed windows at the front and front doors, and most of it's we're blocking roads for extended amounts of time.
You've got to befriend most of the houses in the street.
Yeah.
You definitely need them on your side.
Big part of it, especially working on party walls and whatnot, and if you don't have the neighbours on your side at the start of the project, it's a long experience for both sides. So,
well, I love that you said that. It's funny because I had a contractor mentor of mine, and he said, "Hey, Brad, when you start a project, go meet all the neighbors, give them your contact info, the superintendent." And it's interesting because, applying that, keeping a clean job site, being respectful of noise to your neighbors and stuff, it's lead generation. We have a custom home now that was a direct referral from the neighbor who saw us work and our methods, and said, "I really respect that. I want to have you guys build my house." And so you're saying that where you're at party walls, where you're sharing common walls with homeowners that share the same wall, how even more important to build that relationship with your neighbor.
Yeah, it's funny. We're the project we're on now, it's our third house we've built on the same side of the street. The street's only got 20 houses in it, and another one where purely by chance it's in the inner city, where we're about to start work on our 4th project in that one small street. So it goes a long way. A lot of our guys, we've drilled it into them, and respect to them. It's always, "Hey, how you going? Come introduce ourselves at the start of the project." We really try and limit our power tools and we'll drop around a set of flowers if something were to ever, go wrong. And we just really try and keep that relationship with the neighbours, because as you said, it's not just about that project, it's ongoing work. And if they see you being respectful in the street and, carpooling and limiting the car spaces and whatnot, it seems to go a long way. I feel like it's one of the ultimate appraisals, as you said as well, to work in the same street, it means you've done something right the first time.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said that. So how does, getting into the design of your builds, how does the design differ in Australia from what you see here in the US?
I think so. My partner's based out of Canada, so I head over to North America every 12 months or so. So I get to see a lot of, the North American architecture and whatnot. And I'd probably say, and obviously big followers of your stuff, Brad, but I think as a scale, I mean, some of the things you're doing in the middle of the desert just blows our minds. It's even moving some of those cactus, that's just crazy. Blown my mind. I show everyone that's very crazy. Impressive. The main differences, I guess, would probably be scale. I mean, I know America's quite a large,
excessive, and more excessive. Yeah.
I think a lot of rather than the imperial versus metric side of things, I guess main differences would be you guys, we have a lot of heat, right, but not much snow in Sydney, so trying to work out our insulation requirements and whatnot. We don't really have a winter here as opposed to a lot of parts in the States, I'd say. So our homes are generally designed to be open plan living and indoor outdoor area.
Very similar to me.
Yeah, where you are as well, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't really have all those elements. I guess a lot of we have a thing called a NATHERS report and a BAS6 certificate, which sort of tells us the targets we have to hit to become more thermally efficient as part of the approval process. So,
Do you have clients? Do you have clients that are looking into homes that are more energy efficient or net zero passive houses, that essentially want, less carbon footprint? Or
definitely, we've been working. We've been using a fair bit of solar in our latest designs. That was sort of Jace's idea mainly, but
we really wanted to start giving back and leaving our footprint. As builders, we share that responsibility of, I can really be pushing for these sort of things in that prelim process and in the sales process. And so we reached out to a bunch of renewable companies for water tanks and solar, which are probably just touching the tip of the iceberg and whatnot, but really just sort of teamed up and expressed our mission and probably interviewed 5 or 6 different companies before settling on one. And we decided to, our goal by the end of the year was for every project we touch, whether it's a renovation or a new build, to have renewable energy as a standard. And we don't charge a margin or anything for the process. It's just a direct wholesale cost passed to the client to make it more accessible. And that's something that, we're hoping we can sit back and only grow from that, but sit back in 20 years time and be really proud of reducing that carbon footprint. But I guess there's a lot of more renewable energy materials that are coming out.
Technology, I guess, is the best way to put it. But so
definitely getting more and more inquiries. How about yourself? I'm sure.
We've really gotten into that. We're doing some ICF homes and net zero. We have a net zero project that we're breaking ground on, which we're pretty excited about. And one thing that I love about that house is we're actually putting in a water storage tank that's going to collect all the rainwater. So we get monsoons and heavy rains. And so it's going to collect all the water from the property in this storage tank. And there's a filtration system built in that's run by solar power. And this is actually going to feed all the irrigation. So even though we're in the desert, we do still have irrigation and plantings, and they do need constant irrigation. So the rainwater we capture, it's not drinkable, but it's going to be used to, for the landscape. So now they're not using a natural resource to water the landscape.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but Australia's probably just come out of quite a large drought. We seem to have copped it this last sort of 6 months
big
or so.
Big fire, big drought.
The fires, the drought, you name it, we get it over here. So, our local council's pretty much made it a requirement for a lot of projects that have to go through council approval that a rainwater storage tank of, anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000 litres is essential. So we've been doing a little bit of burying tanks under driveways and just trying to make it accessible for our clients and trying to really.
Most clients are wanting to put the rainwater tanks in. Like it's not, even if it's not a requirement, most clients, lean towards wanting to use rainwater for their gardens and stuff.
Yeah, which makes sense, especially here,
Yeah.
So what do you guys see, speaking about codes, codes are changing, I'm sure, in Sydney as well as here constantly, as this becomes more of a talking point. So what do you see as our key issues, how the housing market will change, construction in Australia? What do you see as your big pain points, and then what builders should be doing over the next 10 years?
Look, I think, obviously renewables and passive houses, I think, are going to become very, very popular as well. I think moving forward, over the past sort of 10 years or so, we hit quite a large housing boom in Australia, and a lot of developments and dual locks became prevalent. But especially with COVID and times, everyone seems to be, sitting in their house and thinking how they can do things better. So I think, sorry, Brad, I've just completely lost my.
No, it's funny you say that. So talk to me about the term dual lock. Is that like a production community or like a development for homes, like in the suburbs?
Yeah, dual occupancy. So it's a duplex. So anything, basically the codes are in majority of Sydney, anything over 600 square metre block, which I think we worked out to be about 6,500 square feet. You're basically allowed, pending heritage zone and whatnot. But a lot of people were knocking over their homes,
splitting them down the middle and putting two on it and selling one and either moving into that one, the second one themselves, or selling both and moving on. I mean, a lot of families were sort of knocking down their small house and then building two, moving into one and selling the other. So
obviously getting a brand new home to live in and a bit of an investment opportunity. So especially probably generation of our parents and mums and dads that have had their house for 20, 30 years or so, probably paid 200,000 back in the day, and they're probably valued at 1.2, 1.3 million now.
Wow.
For them to be able to knock that home over, invest in a house for maybe 2 million, sell one of the sides for maybe 1.5 and pretty much live in their one mortgage free. It was a very, very high trend over the past sort of 6 or 7 years, and depending on the area, it was a lot of people benefited from that boom, and it sort of took that slow decline as we've obviously come into the end of that peak, which was around 2017. But towards the end of 2017, started 2018, it really started to boost again, and then obviously COVID hit and it's really thrown a spanner in the works. But yeah, that's probably quite a large trend, especially in Sydney.
Well, it's interesting.
Didn't need that area anymore.
Well, it's very similar. So I grew up in San Diego, before moving to Phoenix. Yeah. And there's an island, Coronado Island, which some of our listeners may know. And, their homes, they were long lots, really long lots. And a lot of the homeowners, at least when I was in high school, so this is in the 90s, they would take their lot, they'd do a lot split, build another house that they'd move into, and then sell their existing. So they're kind of doing the same thing where now they're essentially moving into new builds, splitting the lot because they're these long lots, from the street to the alley. So very similar. And with COVID, it's funny, just on a side note, my parents just had their 40th wedding anniversary. So we sent them to Australia and they had arrived. They were there in Sydney for 2 days. COVID locked everything down. They had to fly back.
You're kidding.
No, so they're going to have to go back. But it's funny you say that, because with the remodel world, what I've seen clients now that are looking, okay, well, if I'm going to be locked in my home again, if this is going to be shut down for another virus in the future, I want my sauna, I want my cold plunge, I want my workout room, I need my office. And so we're seeing a lot of people looking at remodels to take existing places that they like location wise, and now let's cater it to our lifestyle in case something happens again.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're finding the same. It's, not to get off topic, but the current market, it seems that we probably had this transition period early March when it all became prevalent, and everyone sort of panicked a little bit. And there's about a month or so where no one really knew what was happening, and people were pulling out of projects. And, we had a lot of builders around here that were losing 3, 6, 12 months worth of work instantly, deposits paid and it completely crumbling. But then after that sort of 4 weeks, and I'm not sure if it's the same over there, but there was a bit more certainty. And we're at that one stage where we're glued to the TV watching our Prime Minister telling us if we can leave the house tomorrow or not, which was just a bizarre time. But we were quite fortunate in timing when our projects commenced. But after that sort of 4 or 5 week period, people sort of realised and adapted so quickly that, hey, life goes on. We're going to be in our house a lot. Let's spend this time and let's look at what we hate and what we love, and let's really sketch up these plans. And here we are 3 or 4 months later, we're sort of getting 3 or 4 calls a day sometimes of clients wanting to proceed and look into plans and whatnot. So bit of a bizarre time. I'm not sure if that's the same market everywhere, but it's
very similar to here. Very similar to yours. So let me ask you guys, that's how did you guys meet? I mean, here you are, young entrepreneurs. Did you work together previously? I mean, how did that relationship or decision to say, let's go into business together?
So we were, like, growing up, we were mutual friend group. Not exactly the best of friends, but hung around a few of the same people, saw each other at parties, all that kind of stuff. And then I actually sort of probably started talking to Jace more heavily when I was thinking of leaving my company and going to work for his, like, the company that he was working for at the time.
We came from pretty similar backgrounds. Both worked for quite high-end builders around Sydney, and both sort of wore a lot of responsibility at an early age. Still as an apprentice, starting to run projects, and our bosses really took that step back, which at the time it's getting thrown in the deep end. It's a bit overwhelming, but you really look back at it now and the value of being able to learn on someone else's time and that responsibility and, really learning how to build. I think it sort of pushed us into that extended growth quite at an early age. And
we both left sort of our bosses at the same time, I guess, and sort of lent on each other a lot, asking advice and sort of helping each other out where we could. And then eventually sort of taking on a couple of projects together.
Yeah, we started off like, the normal decks and pergolas, and we both left our bosses at the time, and they both told us it was a big mistake and we don't know what we're doing. And by all means, they're probably right. But, throwing ourselves in the deep end, we're both quite naturally ambitious. And I think that's, if you've got that drive to sort of get you through, you're going to find a way. Yeah. So we started off, the small 5-10 grand decks and pergolas, and we learned a lot. It's about learning, dealing with clients, which is something, on a money scale, it's always a naturally awkward conversation that you probably never get to learn by working for anyone else. So early days, we were sort of grabbing these smaller projects and evolved into sort of bathrooms, and we started running, trades and whatnot through. And then we landed a couple of bigger projects and just decided to sort of jump in and sort of split it 50-50. And I think we did that a little bit casually for about 12 months or so. And then we sort of, I got back from a bit of a Europe trip and sort of sat down with Mark and said, right, let's do this. And that's pretty much where Beyond Build was formed. And then we were both sort of evolved from, we're both carpenters by trade, and we'd both be wearing a bag on each project. And we sort of realized that, hey, a lot of our resources are chewed up on this small renovation. We've got to take on another one, and you'll take one and I'll take one. So that happened, and then we sort of took on a third. And then I guess that's the stage where I sort of stepped back and Mark took more of a PM role and running a team. And, we grew and got a first apprentice and second apprentice and carpenter and, learn along the way. Probably didn't make any money for a while. Learn a lot of experience.
So like all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I guess, it kind of works. We're very, very different people, so to speak. It's definitely a very different taste in architecture and building and design. And, I'm probably probably better off suited behind the desk and doing this pre-con stuff and the sales and whatnot. And Mark's just a weapon carpenter. He's just he just loves it.
Thanks for pumping me up.
He just loves it on site. I've never seen anyone just work so efficiently and run a team.
I find it hard to get off site. Like Jace has done a really good job of sort of being able to separate himself from site to looking after the office stuff, which has been great for me because I don't know how I would have done it otherwise. I just physically can't seem to get myself away from overseeing everything. I don't know how, but
it's like pulling teeth. I've got to lure him into the office on a Friday afternoon with a case of beer sitting on his desk. It's the only way you'll get in here.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's really good because what's interesting about any company, right, is you alluded to it. Everyone thinks this is overnight success, right? Beyond Build that you guys are overnight, which they don't realize the time that goes in, the investment from you and figuring out, okay, what are we good at? What's our strength? What's our wheelhouse? The time vested in these small projects to develop into big ones. You start with those small ones, start building a resume, marketing, but you start realizing your strengths. Okay, Jason, you're really good on the front end, business development, the budget side, and Mark, you're good in the field. So let's divide and conquer. Let's, let's not overlap. Let's not micromanage each other. Any company to be successful, you need less overlap. You need clear and direct handoffs. And that's something I learned that our company's getting better at from all our team to understand their role, their responsibility, and then they can perform.
You need to complement each other's, strengths and weaknesses. And you see it a lot of guys that, we get asked a lot, oh, how'd you find a partner? And it's kind of, it wasn't, no, I wouldn't say by luck, but it kind of just was one of those things that just evolved. And I think trust is a huge issue. A lot of guys seem to think, you get two Marks or you get two Jasons, they're going to clash. And it just doesn't work.
You definitely got to trust one another. And you definitely can't oversee everything that the other person's doing, or, your time's, not spent well, but it's, it's just more, comes down to a trust thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's huge that you've done that. I mean, that's the most important key to business, right? And you understand your yin and yang, and now here you are. And I can't thank you guys enough. I mean, you've been amazing guests, offered some incredible insights to culture and branding, mistakes we made, how to better that, and how do we bring value? How do we set the stage, vetting the customer, with that fee in the beginning, and especially making time from Australia to come on. So what's next for you guys? What's upcoming? What are you excited about?
Well, look, on sort of my front, I'll start. I'm actually building my own house with my partner at the moment, and it's chewing up a lot of time and energy and resources, but it's very rewarding. We're sort of Beyond Build's projects are taking precedence at the moment, so we're there kind of Saturday, Sundays, and whatnot, and just building our projects. Just a little sandstone cottage that backs onto the bush, and sort of doing quite a major renovation there. So that's super exciting, and that probably takes up most of my spare time and thoughts, because we are starting to tap into a larger market with some new coastal builds located on the beach. Got a couple of more sort of larger projects and whatnot, and just trying to keep that pipeline full and sail through to the other side of this bizarre climate at the moment. But we're super excited, and it's got some really exciting stuff coming up, and it's definitely keeping us on our toes for sure. Definitely.
And it's always more fun building on the ocean. You got to deal with that salt. So
absolutely
it changes those building methods a little bit, as you're going through to from the wear and tear of that salty air,
Oh, definitely. Especially
it does. So where can our listeners find you guys?
Mate, we're our handle on Instagram is Beyond Build Constructions. Same as our Facebook search, and we're our online website, I guess, is just www.beyondbuildconstructions.com. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Brad. Really appreciate you having us on. Been a long time listener, first time caller, and it's been an honor.
Oh, I love that you said that. That's great. Well, Jason and Mark, can't thank you enough for making time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Cheers, mate.